What better thing to wear for a Hannah Hart review video than a shirt with an alcoholic pun on it? Hi all! This week I'm going to be reviewing Hannah Hart's new book, My Joint Kitchen Holidays, How to Savor and Celebrate the Year. It just came out this week, which is perfect timing because if you're anything like me, the end of October is when you really start being like, yes, the holidays are coming, immediately followed by, oh god, the holidays are coming. While it may seem a little strange to be reviewing a cookbook like this instead of in a kitchen trying out the recipes, this really isn't a cookbook. It's not a traditional cookbook by any means. Do not go in expecting that. It is much more a series of essays, and each essay comes accompanied with a recipe, some of which are recipes for activities, things like gluing food to a poster board as a vision board, some of which are just very vague general recipes at a lot of measurements, some of which are traditional recipes, but they are absolutely not the point of the book other than thematically tying everything together. If you're not familiar with Hannah Hart, and you probably are, she's really one of the OG YouTubers. She's mainly known for My Drunk Kitchen, which is a fantastic series that is both hysterical and really deep sometimes. She's one of those people that is just great at mixing levity and heaviness at the same time without cheapening the seriousness of what she's talking about or sounding like she's lecturing you, which is very difficult to find. She's written 2 other books as well, another My Drunk Kitchen cookbook, as well as Buffering, which is her memoir, and I highly recommend that if you deal with mental health issues or if you come from a family dealing with mental health issues. I think my therapist is probably sick of hearing about that book because I can't shut up about it. I love it so much. She's also a very outspoken lesbian and a great ally to everyone under the rainbow, which is why she wanted to make this book. She said that she wanted to do this because there's so little queer representation in the holidays, especially in pop culture. And I mean, as bisexual, that's definitely true. I really don't see things like no holiday movies or Christmas carols or greeting cards or anything that really relates to my specific experience in the world. And then you throw mental health issues on top of it, which just makes the holidays harder. If you're already prone to having a hard time getting motivated or getting overwhelmed by things or putting a lot of pressure on yourself, the holidays can just be twice as hard because it just forces you to take part in things and be active and be engaged and add all these other things to your plate when your plate may already be super full. Even if you aren't queer, this book is fantastic. It's not exclusively a queer book at all. There are pride recipes in here, which is fantastic, but that is not the only audience at all. It's really for anyone who, whether or not it's through mental health issues or just being alienated from your family or just having a hard time learning how to celebrate and let go and be vulnerable and really experience gratitude, whatever may cause that in you, this book is going to be very helpful. I'm always very nervous about anything that is self-help because I've had depression and anxiety and different issues like that since I was 8 years old, and I'm so used to getting talked down to. There are so many people that are like, oh, if you just go for a walk, or if you just learn how to be happy with what you have, or if you just tried smiling more or getting out more, you wouldn't have as hard of a time, which is not true. Anyone with mental health issues knows it's not that simple. And sometimes I feel like a lot of self-help things can be extremely dismissive, extremely binary, extremely just simplistic to the point of being very insulting. So I'm always a little nervous about that. This book is absolutely nothing like that. It really doesn't feel like self-help. She has such a natural way of writing and she's so open about her own experience. It feels much more like you're having epiphanies while reading as opposed to someone else spoon-feeding you things, which to me is very much more helpful because then I'm coming to a conclusion instead of being told how to think or feel. It even follows a narrative. It really begins with starting off the year with it assumes that you start off the year not really knowing how to celebrate, not knowing how to savor small moments, not knowing how to really be vulnerable and grateful. For whatever reason, it doesn't assume what you're reasoning in, which I also really like. I think it makes it much more applicable to a large amount of people. It's broken down by month, and each month has several holidays. There are the more prominently known ones that everybody expects. There's Christmas, there's Halloween, there's Hanukkah, but she also has smaller ones like Loyalty Day and Cookie Day and Video Games Day. So it kind of plays with fun, unknown holidays and then uses those as jumping off points to start the essays and then do the accompanying recipe or activity. And it starts off with not really knowing how to celebrate because a big part of her point is, if you put all this pressure on the major holidays at the end of the year, you may not know how to celebrate and enjoy them if you haven't learned how to celebrate and enjoy life in general and find things that are good throughout the year that you may not expect or be looking for. Little things like just noticing that you're still breathing. There are essays in here about learning how to experience pride if you're a queer person who has a hard time with the concept of pride, or has internalized homophobia or biphobia, something I've struggled a lot with. Like, it took me a long time to accept myself. And once I did, I'm like, well, I don't really fit in, I don't really belong, they probably don't actually want me at Pride. Like, all those thoughts happen. She covers that beautifully. But there are essays in here on learning how to be grateful for mistakes you've made, on learning how to actually value yourself and taking yourself seriously. It's just a very beautiful and organic and natural journey from not knowing how to celebrate, not knowing how to experience gratitude, not knowing how to be okay with a holiday that doesn't look normal, or how to find chosen family, or how to accept yourself if you have a hard time accepting yourself, or your family doesn't accept you, or you feel like the world doesn't accept you. And it all leads into learning how to really appreciate life every single moment, how to not feel pressured by holidays, but instead use them as a time to reflect and think, and how to find those kinds of holidays all throughout the year, not to try to cram it all into, a month or 2 months in the end of the year and force all this at once, but how to kind of spread it out throughout the year and continually find acceptance and growth and cause for celebration. And as someone with depression, that is something that is incredibly hard for me. It's so easy for me to look on the dark side, or to look at everything I'm not doing instead of what I've done. It's so easy to look at the holidays as proof of what I haven't accomplished as opposed to what I have. Sometimes, honestly, just breathing is enough of an accomplishment, and I feel weak for admitting that or thinking that, and this book really has helped me be more proud of something that simple. One of the things that makes the essays of this book work so well, and what makes that overall narrative so natural and compelling, and what makes it not feel shoved down your throat the way a lot of self-help books can, is the fact that Hannah is honestly a very beautiful writer. If you haven't read her stuff before, Hannah is a huge poetry fan. I feel like that very much comes through in what she writes. Everything she writes ends up feeling very poetic. But even when she's handling a dark topic or writing in this really beautiful way, she always manages to be so humorous and put in like the corniest, cheesiest puns, and still be so vulnerable and raw and speak in a very natural way, like as if she's just sitting and talking to you. And that just makes it so much easier to swallow because it's really engaging, because it's so beautifully written. And it feels like she's just exposing herself as opposed to telling you how to feel or trying to expose you. And in doing that, it kind of makes you open up and be like, oh, I really relate to this is really clicking for me, or this isn't clicking for me, why? And I think that is just such a more effective way to handle something like this. She's also brilliant at actually having the narrative flow through the novel, because I feel like, see, that's what I just said, I called it a novel, and it's not written like a novel. It's so different and interesting and very, very clever, and the kind of thing that it's just technically so difficult to do. It's so hard to take something like that is basically a satire of a cookbook and then turn it into this beautiful memoir that is also a very helpful and practical self-help guide. Like, that is not an easy thing to do, technically speaking, and she just makes it feel so easy and so natural. And it's not really until you're done reading the book and you're like, oh, I just went to therapy and didn't realize it. To give an idea of what this book feels like and the kind of lessons you can glean from it, and something that this paragraph so spoke to me with depression, because it is exactly what I have a hard time doing in my own life. And it's right at the end of the book, so it is a bit of a spoiler. Feel free to skip this little section if you don't want anything ruined for you. It's not like a plot spoiler, obviously, but it is kind of the emotional spoiler, like what she ends up coming to. But sometimes if you're really depressed, a little happy spoiler is not the worst thing. My mother always told us, so long as you are breathing, anything is possible. This phrase helped me push through many hours, days, sometimes months of despair. As long as we continue to be open and awake, we offer ourselves as agents of change, sometimes in our lives, sometimes in the lives of others. You exist. Though it may not always feel that way, awareness of this fact alone can bring you some measure of joy if you let it. For some of us, it's more difficult to process joy than sorrow. For some of us, good news can lead to the worry of heartbreak. The joy of having and the fear of losing can be dangerously intertwined. So it's our way to remind each other to allow the joy to come when it comes, to celebrate. I need more of that in my life, because that is what's difficult for me. I'm definitely the kind of person that is constantly finding any reason why I'm not doing good enough, or I am not enough, or this thing was actually a failure, or I don't belong in this celebration, or I'm not worthy of celebrating, or I shouldn't be included, or no one even, like, it's so easy for me to be like, oh, I bet no one even wants me at their house on Thanksgiving. And that's obviously a thing to deal with during major holidays, but you know, in the middle of March, in the middle of June, it's really hard to just feel happy and to feel that sense of peace, or to even remember to take a moment to just take stock of what might be worth celebrating. And this book really feels like a great way to encourage you to look for whatever little things you can celebrate in your life, whatever they are, however small they are, whether or not it's just the fact that you're alive, or the fact that you're trying, or the fact that, you know, potatoes exist, or you have a friend that has the most wonderful laugh, or you have a pet that you love. It doesn't have to be anything major. It doesn't have to be, you know, that you're wildly successful in your dream career, or that you're madly in love with your soulmate, or that you have a family that accepts and loves you even. It can just be something as little as the leaves are changing, or it's a beautiful day, or your bed feels soft. Anything like that can be worth celebrating, and especially if you feel alienated because you're queer, or if you feel like you don't belong for whatever reason, or if you have mental health issues. I just think this is such an important philosophy to have, and I think this is a really palatable way, fun, to take that kind of advice without it feeling overwhelming or lecturing or hard. It just feels like a friend sharing what they've discovered about themselves and trying to help you out, but in a way that's fun and light and playful, without dismissing you or without dismissing your pain. It's honestly a really beautiful book. It's a really fun book. I'm 100% going to use this book next year to read them on the holidays as they come up, and use that as an opportunity to self-reflect and to figure out, okay, what do you have to be happy about? What do you have to be excited about? What do you need to sit back and pause? Are you taking on too much? Are you being too hard on yourself? And it's so easy to forget to do that I think having this book as a reminder is going to be super helpful. I hope it'll be really helpful to you too. I'm very grateful to Hannah for writing this book. Also, she mentioned I was lucky enough to go to her show in Boston the night before this book launched, and she mentioned there that if this book becomes a bestseller, she may write a queer YA novel next. Please buy this book because I need that to happen. And another thing that may help if you have a hard time taking advice from someone or listening to self-help stuff. I have very similar issues. I always think people have ulterior motives, or that they don't really care. I'm really bad about thinking that even if I go to somebody for help, that 10 minutes later they've forgotten about me, or it just doesn't matter to them. And I'll never forget, one time I was volunteering at Trevor Live with the Trevor Project, and it was such a mind-blowing experience watching the volunteers for the Trevor Project, the people that man the lifeline for queer and questioning youth that are in crisis. I remember just standing in the back of the wall during the event and hearing them talk about it, and hearing them talk and cry over calls they got years before, and how they remembered everything about the person, and how much it mattered to them, and how much they still cared, and how much they obviously were deeply moved by them, and really sincerely still thought of them and hoped that they had overcome, and that they were still trying, and that they hadn't given up. Knowing that was sincere just made things start clicking a little more for me, that there could be sincere people. And having met Hannah Hart, this is the second time I've gotten to meet her. She did a meet and greet after the show. She is one of those people that you just know right away that she's actually listening, she actually sees you, she actually cares. And if you've never gotten the chance to meet her, first off, if you ever can, she's doing a meet and greet something, try. She's so great. It's very obvious how sincere she is about caring about her fan base and her viewers and her readers and her listeners, and how much that matters. And that makes the book even more powerful because I know she means it. If you're wondering, it's definitely worth a read. Please check it out, especially if you have a hard time celebrating or finding happiness just in random moments of your own life. I'll be back next week with another video. Until then, be well and be happy, and try to find something to celebrate. Thanks so much.